My name is Taylor, and I work on our evangelism team. I'm not going to try to convert you to anything. Just trying to show you some of the things you can do with products. And for today, I'm going to be focusing in on our email marketing product, which is called Zoho Campaigns. So let's go ahead and dive in. So email marketing, we're all pretty familiar with it. The nice thing about email marketing is that it's really, really simple, right? It's as simple as sending an email. And we've all sent a lot of emails in our lives, and we've surely received probably more emails than we'd like to. And that's actually a really good first step, though, for working within the email marketing channel, because it means we all are familiar with what constitutes a good email. We interact with these things, we see these things all the time. It's not like I'm asking you to review, a big section of code and say, hey, is this good code? You might go, well, I have no idea what any of that says, so I'll say yes, right? We've all received a lot of emails, and we've all had a lot of experience with them, so we really know, quite a bit right away. And to start off with, if we just look at the three kind of major pieces of an email, it starts with who are you sending your email to, right? If you're aware of your audience, you know then kind of what you need to be delivering to them in the first place, right? A subject line obviously is a short description of what you're sending, and then your content is going to be the reason or the information that you're actually trying to send. So if we understand those three simple ideas and we just kind of always take them to their logical conclusion, we'll make sure that we're always sending pretty good emails to our prospects or our customers. So first, I'm going to just kind of go over a few emails that I've seen that I think are kind of cool. So the first one is from this bookstore, the largest independent bookstore in the US, a company called Powell's. They're based out of Oregon. And they, I buy stuff from them occasionally, and then they send me emails. So this is a pretty standard email that someone might send, which I would call like a promotional email, right? They're basically promoting the fact that they have free shipping if I use a code, and they're trying to get me to click on the big graphic, which drives me to their website so I can use the free shipping code and I'll buy some books. This is a pretty standard promotional email that, we would all kind of be sending if we're trying to boost some sales. And as you can see, all the most important information is captured in this big graphic, and of course I can click the big graphic. There's really nowhere else for me to click. So it's pretty straightforward. It looks good on mobile. It works on the web. It's a very simple email, and I know exactly what I need to do when I see this. I need to just click the big graphic. So this is an important thing when we're sending email, right? People are not dumb when you send them an email, but people can be confused. So that's why you need to just make sure you're making it easy on them to know exactly what you want them to do, right? If you send them this email and then you include 3 other buttons in this email that link to 3 other different places, and you go, I wonder why no one's clicking on the one button I want them to. Well, the reason is because you've given them 4 places to click, right? So always prioritize and create an actual visual hierarchy of what you want them to do, and that's going to be something that's really, really productive and effective. So this next email is an older example, but it's one that I think is really cool, and it's from this company called Reformation, and they do like women's apparel. I assure you I am not one of their customers, but fair enough. Someone threw up their hands like, hey man, whatever you do in your spare time, it's all good. Anyways, so Reformation, they do like women's apparel, and they're eco-friendly, and that's kind of their whole thing. And their brand identity is really, really simple. They have that kind of black font, Reformation. That's kind of how they do their logo all the time. They like to use white space. So they send this email, and as I move through the slides, this is going to kind of simulate scrolling. So this is how the email looks when you open it. Really kind of striking, model wearing their clothes. And they say, this isn't really the country, another model. We just went to a small park by our office. Looks real pretty though. And it's not really a Victorian collection. It's something that's pretty affordable, something that you can buy. And then of course it reminds you that there's free shipping worldwide, and now you can click on one of those pictures and it'll take you to the website, so that way you can start shopping, right? And they were playing off this whole like fake news thing. I think that was actually in their header, right? We don't need to get into that. But basically, This is something they had done that was pretty like newsworthy, pretty topical at the time, and it's still something that would have been. And it really doesn't look like an email I've really ever gotten from any other clothing company before. One that uses big striking images that puts their products on display. One that changes up the size of the image to keep it visually interesting. And if any time I clicked on any one of those things, I would have fulfilled the action that they wanted me to, which is to drive me to the site so I could start shopping. And again, this is another email they send that I think is also very, very clever. So this is their email they send when you have purchased something from them. This is their purchase confirmation email. And what does the message say? Oh, well done, you bought something from us. Excellent job, right? So again, it's starting to try to reward you, try to encourage you from your behavior. And as we scroll down, we start to see some other interesting stuff. You see at the top of this is a little table that talks about how much water and how much let's just stick with water. How much water it takes as an industry standard to create and ship an order. And the industry standard is 234 gallons. Their orders do it in 86 gallons. So you have saved the earth 148 gallons with your order, right? So you did good for buying our thing, but then you've also done good because you've shopped with the eco-friendly option, right? So this is a way that they're creating a lot of value in an email, even when it's a standard transactional email. All of the really simple stuff that you would expect to get to, the thing that it was, the place that it was shipped to, the order number, all of that stuff, that's all just pushed down to the bottom because they know you don't really need that. You're not going to really look at it. You're going to need to reference it if you need to. But really what they're doing is they're creating a lot of value by reinforcing their brand, encouraging you. And just as a wild guess, I'm pretty sure this is also helping to reduce the amount of returns they're getting because people are feeling pretty good about the type of shopping they're doing. And again, even if they can't save you money, at least you're helping to save the environment, right? So that's kind of another way they're doing it. Of course, like any good marketers though, any good email marketers, they've also included this button so that you can geek out on the details. And when you click on that, it takes you to their website where it gives you a hashtag, tells you more about their company, and encourages you to start talking about them on Twitter or on Facebook, where, who knows, you might inspire some other person to go to their website and buy things from them, right? And not only that, but it brings you closer to their company, brings you closer to their brand identity, and now you actually feel like, oh, this is a company I really like, I really support, I'm gonna buy stuff from them until the end of time, right? Like Patagonia has done this pretty well. Every time I go to San Francisco, I'm completely caught off guard by the fact that everyone in the Starbucks is wearing something from that company. So they're doing a good job. And of course, in the top left of this page, you again have the option to start shopping all over again from an order confirmation email, right? So again, a lot of value that's being created in what would appear to be a throwaway email. Right? An email that we wouldn't think twice about. We send it because we have to, not because it's going to be anything anyone wants, but this company has actually figured out a way to do something really interesting with the emails they're sending. So last example is an email that I got from Airbnb once. We're all familiar with this company. It allows us to travel and book accommodation in other cities. I used to live in San Francisco. So it says, you know, you're probably a well-versed San Franciscan. Here's some things you can do this Valentine's Day in San Francisco. Interesting idea here, right? Because they're trying to tell me about fun things I could be doing in the city I live in, right? And I think when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because if they could show me a good time in the city I already live in, chances are I'm going to think that Airbnb is going to be really good if I go somewhere where I know absolutely nothing about that place, right? Makes a lot of sense. If someone could show you a good time in your hometown, they're probably going to be able to show you a good time if you go somewhere crazy like, you know, Tokyo or, you know, Italy or something, right? And so this, of course, just has a bunch of then links there of just showing me fun stuff I can do. And of course, if I click on any one of those things, they'll know that they did their job and they created a positive engagement for me. And of course, they probably don't have a way of actually tracking if I actually did this, but seeing a click on one of these emails would probably make them feel like they did a good job, that they sent me something interesting. So does that make sense as well? Yeah? So those are just a few examples. And the reason I want to start with those examples is because it just gives us something concrete to look at, and it also gives us a way to start thinking about the emails that we get from companies every day. I mean, every day we get a million of these things. So we can start thinking about, what are the emails that I'm seeing on a daily basis that are effective? Which are the emails that actually get me to click on something, that get me shopping, right? What are the things that companies do that are really interesting that I could just steal the idea from, right? These are the kinds of things that's really important to start thinking about when we're talking about email marketing, because there's a lot of different things we can do if we're going to participate in this channel and we're going to use it. This is just a few of the things we can do. It's very, very flexible. You can do audience building, onboarding, re-engagement, post-sales surveys, event marketing, promotional campaigns, you name it. Email is a pretty good way to try to communicate with people and drive them to do something or create some kind of engagement. Especially the reason why I put customer newsletters at the bottom is because there's always this idea of, oh, we'll just create a newsletter. We'll just create a newsletter. That's like the default email marketing option. And yeah, that can be a really good idea if you have some expertise you want to share, or you can communicate some value through a newsletter. But there's a lot of these other options that you can be using email for that can also create just a lot of value. So with that said, this whole idea of creating value, don't bug people, right? Don't bother them, don't annoy them, don't harass them, don't buy mailing lists and upload that into the system and just say, everyone's gonna hear about my business, so help me God, right? I mean, that's really not really, helping anyone out. I mean, if I came to your house later this evening and decided to tell you all about Zoho, you'd probably be like, hey, I really need you to leave my property. That would be really great, And it's the same idea. You wanna get permission to use people's information. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, obviously, Mark Zuckerberg's talking to a whole bunch of people about that today, right? So it's important that we use the data that we get, that the information we collect in the appropriate way. And this can be something obviously as flagrant as like buying mailing lists and using those, where you've bought my data and I've never ever contacted you or anything, but it could also be something that's a little more of a gray area, right? So for example, we meet after this and you get my business card and I say, hey, call me if you have any campaigns questions, I am totally happy to talk to you. Well, say you didn't call me at 2 a.m. on a Friday night and you want to talk to me about my plans next weekend. I would kind of wonder why on earth this call is happening, right? I mean, I'm sure some of you are very nice people, and I'm sure we'd have a lot of fun on some weekend trip, but that's really not the context in which I gave you my information. So the fact that you're saying, well, you gave it to me, I can use it for this, it's not really true, right? So sometimes there's those gray areas where you say, well, we have all these emails, we should just start blasting them. Again, is that really what those people signed up for? And the reason why it's important to make that distinction is, one, you're going to piss people off and annoy them, for one. Two, you're going to actually hurt the services that you're using, like something like Zoho Campaigns, if everything you send is constantly getting marked as spam, which not only hurts you, but hurts other people as well, right? So it's something that just doesn't really make a lot of sense. And ultimately, you end up getting emails like that, you try to get off those lists and you wonder, God, why can't I get this business to stop emailing me? Or why do those people keep emailing me all this crazy stuff? It's like, well, it's because that's what we also do to people as well, right? So it's like this weird little cosmic karma kind of thing, right? So make sure you're getting permission and you're not spamming. On the flip side of that, give the people what they want. Make sure that you are offering value. I mean, that's the word I've probably used like 7 times already. Offer value, create value, find new ways to do interesting things for your customers or your prospects. And that ultimately ends up being really, really, really good marketing, right? I mean, something like Reformation, like I just showed you, is they give you an idea of buying an eco-friendly option, and then they work that into their content to keep reminding you of that. So the marketing that they're doing is not something like a tangible thing that they're giving you on top of whatever their service is. They're not giving you a discount, but they're making you feel good about your purchase. And that ultimately is something that's differentiating them, that's distinguishing them from their competitors, right? Rather than going to like H&M or something where you think, wow, H&M, it's really great, but it's all cheap. And I don't really want to think about where this shirt comes from, right? Because chances are, okay. So, sorry. Never know how far to go on that one. Anyways, so give the people what they want, create value, and that's what marketing can really allow you to do, right? So with that, we've been talking about this fake company, Out of Line, which is this design agency, essentially. So if I was thinking about like what's a newsletter that they could do, I would think that the newsletter that they could do is probably something that helps them share their design expertise with the world, right? If you have a bunch of really good designers and you offer a service that's really expensive that people are only going to pay for when they absolutely need it, like a new logo or a new website, well, then one of the ways that you can build goodwill with people, one of the ways you can try to stay in contact with them in between all these big projects would be offering those expert opinions or expert advice for all of the little projects that people need help with for designing stuff, whether that's like presentations or internal documents or whatever. People still need to have some sense of design, and if they're interested in it, then again, this can be a really good channel. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into Zoho Campaigns and kind of start our demo from that point, okay? So the first thing you'll notice is that this was our fake website that we have here. And Dylan mentioned this if you were here for the site session, but we have a newsletter subscription form that we can use, that we can have people sign up for. So one of the things that's important to know is that when you use a sign-up form to have someone sign up and join your mailing list, we practice something called double opt-in, okay? Double opt-in confirmation is basically just following up with someone to make sure they've done a thing that they've done, right? So when I put in an email address here into this field, then what it will do is it will, instead of adding that person to the list right away, it will add them to basically kind of this in-between place where they'll get a confirmation email sent to them. And I was going to show you that, see what that looks like. But a confirmation email gets sent to them and says, hey, you signed up for this list. We're really excited. Just make sure you want to do that, because we want to just be sure that you really want to hear from us. And you can hit opt-in or confirm, and now that person is actually added to the list. Now, one of the reasons we do that is, for one, to make sure that people can't just dump tons of crazy weird data into a system, so we actually have a protection there. And two is to make sure that everyone that gets added to these mailing lists actually wants to be there. And in making sure that they want to be there, it's really, really great, because not only will our mailing list essentially be more effective because everyone in there is like super excited to be there and definitely wants to be there, but it also standardizes all of the people kind of that are joining our list. It gives everyone the same level of interest, at least, right? So for example, if someone is filling out this form, there might be a number of different people with varying levels of interest, or maybe I'll do this, maybe I won't, maybe I will, maybe I won't. It just creates another little step to really make sure that everyone on this list wants to be there. And again, it gives us better idea then of when people are unsubscribing, when things are bouncing, when things are really seeing how they're performing when we check our reports. It gives us this kind of good baseline of really being sure that the people that were responding to that email, that were engaging with that email, really had wanted to be there in the first place. So now we know that maybe we've really done something wrong, maybe we've really not delivered, maybe we've confused them with the subject line, maybe they don't recognize the sender. It really gives us a much stronger starting point to realize what we need to do next. So with that, we'll go ahead and hop into campaigns, all right? So this is Campaigns. Campaigns was recently redesigned. It had a big update about a month and a half ago. So this is pretty exciting. I've never demoed this thing live, so that's pretty cool. So we have this dashboard, and it basically just shows us kind of an overview of a whole bunch of different things. And as we move down this column, we have the option to create campaigns and to see which campaigns that we've sent. We can look at our subscribers and our mailing lists and sync our Zoho Campaigns account with other services like Zoho CRM, for example. We have an automation area where we can create autoresponders, which are emails that get sent out automatically depending on some condition. We also have workflows, so we can move data around automatically, which can be really helpful if we need to manage all of these different lists and make different things happen. We have a library, where we can keep all of our images and email templates, form templates, and attachments. And then we have reports where we can, look at a bunch of different types of reports and really gain some insight so we can keep improving the different emails that we're sending. When we are in campaigns and we're thinking about sending a campaign, really the most important thing, as I had mentioned at the very beginning, is really the idea of who are we sending an email to. So we'll start by looking at our lists, because our lists are really the most important thing arguably in the system. It's going to be all of the different people that we can actually communicate with that are broken up into categories that allow us to engage with them in the proper way. So generally speaking, when we are creating lists, people kind of wonder sometimes, how granular should I make my lists? Right? I mean, how do I know which groups of people should go into kind of what lists, and how should I arrange that? Generally, I think it's helpful to treat your lists as a category of people that are really well defined and that are also then pretty broad, right? So obviously you can see here we have contacts, we have leads, we have customers, and then we have our newsletter, which is called In the Loop, right? So this is something that I think kind of warrants some elaboration on, is that you might say, well, Taylor, if the people who have signed up for your newsletter, those could be leads, right? Like, why aren't they in the leads category? Similarly, we could also say, well, maybe the people that have signed up for your newsletter are also your customers, right? And then we can start to see why it makes sense to keep these people in a whole other category, right? Like if I was in this list, for example, and I was a customer, it would make sense for me to be in the customer area, but it also would make sense for me to then be opted into the In the Loop mailing list as well. So we know that that's something that I'm also going to want to be receiving, right? So in general, we want to try to think along those lines, and there might be some reasons to make it more specific or to have a more, kind of, like I said, more specific category of people within a bunch of other categories, depending on what we're trying to do. But generally speaking, it's good to try to break them up in this kind of a way, and then within a category like leads, we then can segment them out in a bunch of different ways, right? And so so we can create those segments then, which then allow us to say, okay, so now we have our leads. Let's put all of our leads from California in one segment. Let's put all of our leads that are from some city in another segment, right? I mean, we can just separate them out in a bunch of different ways. If we are sending surveys or sending like Net Promoter Score surveys, where that's the typical question of how likely are you to recommend this product to one of your friends or something, and there's like a 1 through 10 choice. How many of us have seen this before, right? That's something that'd be great to send customers, and we could then segment our customers based off of their NPS scores. So we know that the people who are really excited about us and who really love our services and that give us 10 on that, we want to put them in their own, so that way we can then work on targeting the people who aren't really quite in love with us yet. And we can maybe send them some extra coupons or extra deals and make sure that they feel really special. So does that make sense, this idea of lists and segments? Yeah? Is this, by a show of hands, how many people know all this stuff already? Few people. Okay, so most of us are still good. Or they've tuned out. One of the two. We can do all this stuff with leads. with leads. We can do this stuff with lists. We can do this stuff with segments, and it'll allow us to really accomplish quite a bit in just the way that we organize all of our subscribers. And just as a word about the terminology there is, in campaigns we call them subscribers because the idea being that they are hooked into something and they've subscribed to something, and that's why they're receiving all this communication from you. Subscribers can be a lead in your CRM. They can be a contact in your CRM. It doesn't really mean one thing or the other. Sometimes that terminology can be a little confusing. But generally speaking, any time that you see the word subscriber in campaigns or subscriber anywhere in our documentation, it's just a way of saying that they're in the campaign system, just adding this person to the campaign system. That's all that really means. So we have our list here, all of our different lists, and now we can start thinking about actually creating a campaign. So there's a whole bunch of different types of campaigns we can create. We can start with something that's like a quote-unquote regular campaign, which allows us to create either a plain text or HTML email. The HTML emails are the things that have the big fancy production value with nice graphics and all sorts of stuff like that. But we can also create other types of campaigns, what we call the advanced campaigns, and these give us some additional functionality. So A/B testing, for example. Who's familiar with A/B testing? Pretty much all of us. So that's pretty good. For the people who do not know, A/B testing is a way of basically sending or creating a test of two different versions of something. So creating an A and creating a B version of something, sending it out to a small sample of the people that we want to send this out to, essentially, of a larger group, having the test run to see which option performs better for the sample groups. The one that wins or the one that outperforms it, we then send to everybody else, okay? And with A/B testing, we can test sender name, subject, content. We can test a whole bunch of different things. Whenever we're doing A/B tests, it's important that we always test one thing at a time, right? We need control variables, so that way when we see what actually is changing, we know what is actually the thing that people are responding to. So, and in general, you don't want to just create like, okay, we're creating our one-time campaign, we'll create two radically different campaigns, and we'll just send that out and see what happens, we'll send the best one. Ideally, you want to be running these tests so that you can keep track of what you're learning and keep applying that to the next campaign. Does that make sense? Yeah? Like, instead of like me saying, here, do you want like food item 1? Or food item 2, and they're completely different items, and keep doing that to you every time, I'm never going to really figure out what you like to eat, right? The best thing I can do is keep having small variations on a general idea and keep going with that until I can really, fine-tune it. So in general, a lot of people will do kind of two wildly different things, but it's important to have a good idea, test the idea or try your best with the idea, and then go from there with the testing, rather than just doing radical different stuff all the time, because you just never really learn anything, right? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I explained that great, but okay. So then there's RSS campaigns. This allows you to send emails out that correspond to your blog or some kind of RSS subscription that you might have set up. You can send out emails from Eventbrite through SurveyMonkey campaigns. If you're using Zoho Survey, you can also create a survey in Zoho Survey and add that in to your email campaign so people can take a survey. Again, this is something that's really helpful if you're doing like that NPS survey, the Net Promoter Score. This is a kind of a good campaign you can run and have sending out to your customers. You can also send those out through CRM as well, if that makes more sense for sending your email. Shopify, forums. Forums are a great thing to do if you need to make sure that your customer information is accurate. So if you haven't, heard from someone in a year, or maybe you just send this out once a year because you're always shipping things to people, you can send out this campaign or have it scheduled to go out every year to just check in with people and say, hey, is this your information? If so, great, don't worry about it. If not, feel free to update this. So that way we make sure we have the proper information for people in our records. So those are some of the different things that we can do with our campaigns. So let's just go ahead and make a basic campaign. And when we create it, we have a this description. The color issue, this is going to be some kind of design-related newsletter from our design agency, and we can personalize this in different ways. For example, we can insert the subscriber's first name, if that makes sense. I'm not sure it really makes sense for this email, but we could totally do it by just doing that. If we have first names in our system, it'll automatically get plugged in. So John opens this, he says, the color issue John, or the color issue Mary, or whatever. And very important, if you're going to use these little bits of code to personalize your campaigns or your emails, we call these things merge tags. If you're going to use merge tags, always make sure you have the data for the merge tag you're using. Otherwise, you'll send out stuff like this, where it'll default to customer, right? Which is always really great. Like, how are you doing, customer, right? It's like some weird robot that's taken over the machine or the system, and that no one likes that. I mean, realistically, we all know that it's a machine doing it anyway that's using our name, but it somehow feels very upsetting to have the matrix kind of crumble in front of our eyes like that, So don't do that to people. Always make sure that you have the data that you're using, because even this backup option is not fun, really, for anyone. So then when we talk about a sender, this is going to be, who the person sees this message coming from. So if I sent you an email from my personal email account, it would say Taylor Backman is the one sending you the email. So this is what we're doing right here, right? So one of the things we could say is like, okay, Taylor, right? One of the things, though, that's going to be weird for some people is they don't know who I am from this company, right? So they're going to see it's like the color issue from Taylor. They're like, what the hell will that mean, right? So it's important that we use some kind of sender name that's going to be recognizable to the person that is receiving it. So instead we say out of line, because it's the company that they will recognize, because no one actually would know who I was at that business, right? Here we can choose the different sender mails that we want to use. You can configure all this, so again, that way when someone actually opens the email and they see the address that they're getting this from, it's something that doesn't scare them. It's not from like Russian hacker at yahoo.com, right? It's something that's a recognizable domain, and you can configure all of that pretty quickly. And we can even create folders and save these campaigns as we make them to folders, so that way we can find them easier as well. So we'll go ahead and hit next, since we've got all this basic stuff taken care of. And now we can go ahead and use a template. So there's templates that we can create and then we can save and leave there in the system. Or we can use pre-designed templates that Zoho Campaigns supplies you with. And one thing I'll say very quickly about these, I mean, there's a whole bunch that you can use, is you'll see like this one here, for example, you're going to say, wow, I definitely don't want to say Happy New Year to people in the month of May, because I don't want them to think I'm absolutely out of my mind, right? But really, this is a template that you could use that would be really good, because ultimately what the template is showing you is really just the way that the text is set up, the way that the button is in the email, and then a big dominant image. So all you have to do to really make use of this template is just replace the image and obviously change the text, and you're pretty much done, right? So sometimes I just look at this all the time and I kind of go like, God, we have a lot of Christmas ones for some reason, right? But you don't have to use them for Christmas, right? You can use them for a whole bunch of different things. And this could be actually a really good template. This really isn't very different from the one that I showed you at the very beginning from Powell's, right? Big dominant image, some text, done, right? And they're sending those kinds of emails out all the time. They're sending them out all the time because presumably they're working, right? So this is a really quick way to try to get out a promotional campaign. Obviously, you have to supply the image. That might be tricky if you have limited design resources. If you're not very Photoshop savvy, there's a service you can use that makes the graphic design stuff pretty easy called Canva.com, CANVA.com. Someone's raising the roof over here like it's 1999, and he's basically endorsing that. So it works really well. Again, Canva, CANVA.com. I think it's free still, right? Yeah, so it's free. It's not Photoshop, but it's what you need if you don't know really a lot of design stuff. So that's my endorsement for the day. So we can use these different things, but like I said, I'm actually going to use one of these templates that I've already made just because it, just goes a little bit better for what I'm doing. And so we'll go ahead and load this up. So right away you see that I have this little banner at the top, and this is something that I'm going to be sending all the time to people. This is kind of our little, branding thing, right? This is a pretty basic email, a header, a button, and then from there we can go ahead and swap out this text. We can add different images. Adding an image is really pretty simple. We have a few different ways we can do it. I just click this, and I can just drag it up now. This isn't my computer, so I'm not very good at it on here. Oops. Okay. Well, again, if I knew how to use a computer, that would help. You would think that I would, but who knows, right? So you can add images that are really easily. You can customize this button pretty simply as well. One of the nice things that you can also do that's relatively new is you can add attachments to a campaign. So you add those attachments in another area, and then you can add them in, and then you can send PDFs to people, right? So for example, if or any other kind of document you'd want to send, but let's say PDF. So if you want to set it up some kind of like recurring email that goes out, that you need to always make sure that these people get this kind of catalog that you have, or some kind of document where it's like a brochure, you could set that up and have that run, and that'd be pretty easy. So there's a lot of different things you can do to customize all this. Like I said, you can add images, you can add spacers, you can add buttons, image and text, tables, attachments, you name it. And you of course can also do all sorts of other things. Actually, I guess you can also attach the attachment here. There you go. So there's different ways you can do that. You can add widgets. You can create polls even. So instead of doing a full-on survey, you can add just a little poll in there, and something that's a little more informal. You can embed videos, other kinds of code things or objects like GIFs. Who doesn't want to get a cat GIF in the email, in the mail, right? Everyone does. So you can do all of that stuff as well. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this and proceed to advance our little demo here. And from here, basically, I can pick a header and a footer. The header and the footer is something that you can customize through the settings. Basically, this just makes sure that you have an unsubscribe link in the footer of your email and your address. This is just stuff that makes you spam compliant. Whenever you're sending emails en masse, you have to give people a way to opt out, and that's very important because it allows you to not spam people, right? If people are getting things and they don't want it, they should be able to get out. I always think of like this whole issue with like unsubscribe buttons. Go to someone's house for dinner, and then you're like, okay, I'm done with the dinner, I'm ready to go home, and they like bar the door, and they're like, no, you're not going anywhere, right? And then sometimes people will create like fake unsubscribe links, so it's like you're unsubscribing, but then the next day you get the same email that you just unsubscribed from. That's almost like they've created a false door that you're trying to get out of the dinner party. You move through a false door and you find you're still in the house again. You're like, what the hell just happened? Is this dark mirrors? No one knows, right? Obviously, you want to just make it simple, make it easy for people to unsubscribe from your emails. You'll see here there's the new little thing that we've added, which is called a pre-header. Who's familiar with pre-header text? Okay, so when you get an email and you see like a little preview of what the email says, it says, hi, I'm a Nigerian prince and I really need, right? You see that little pre-header text? Well, sometimes the first text in your email isn't actually very good or descriptive. It's some random text that just might be in there. So adding pre-header text allows you to make sure that you have good information in that opening little preview of the email, okay? So you can add this really simply, and again, it lets us know how many characters we have. It's a confined space, and we can do that. So we'll say something like, right? Color is super important to design, obviously, right? But it's something that would be relevant to our newsletter, something that people are going to be expecting from us, and it even helps kind of jog their memory of what this thing might even be in case we were not sure about that. So pre-header text is super important. I highly recommend using it. If you're not using it, you're messing up. It's something really good. And so we'll go ahead and hit next. And now we can add a mailing list here, so that way we can send this. You'll notice that every time I keep doing stuff like this, it says like my lists and it's empty. Well, the reason it's empty is because another user in this account has created all the lists and stuff like that, right? So don't freak out if, like Sharon on your email marketing team is normally doing things and you need to step in and you're like, oh no, all the data's gone, we've been hacked, something horrible. No, just go up and just change the little setting on that menu and then everything will be okay, right? So we'll go ahead and just choose our subscribers from in the loop. It does this nice little animation and we can now just go ahead and hit next. And it'll save and it'll do all of it. And from here, we're basically able to, review some last minute settings and send it out, or we can schedule it, right? And actually, I should mention, when you do this, and you're not me, sometimes you'll usually actually see a thing where it says send it in for review. So if you need to send the email in for review, what that basically is we just quickly run a check on your email to make sure there's an unsubscribe button that's within there, and that just makes sure, again, that everything's compliant, and then you're free to send it off. It takes just a few seconds usually, and you're all done, okay? So far, that's been the pretty basic look at campaigns that I promised that I would do and that I was kind of scheduled to do for this campaign.